Screensavers in Washington, ladies and gentlemen. I can't believe we're inside the building. We're here with the Director of Research, Dr. Hazeltine at the National Security Agency. Doctor, thank you so much for taking the time.
Great pleasure to be here.
Shu, for those of us who aren't familiar with the NSA, what do you guys do here?
We have two missions. Our first mission is to collect electronic information as it moves from point A to point B outside the borders of the United States. Our other mission is to stop our adversaries from doing the same thing to us, because our job is to invent the future of the collection and protection of electronic information for the nation. Not a small responsibility.
This is for foreign intelligence only, so you don't have the most powerful computers in the world in the basement reading all of our email.
No, we don't. You know, The Enemy of the State and movies like that make you think we can do lots of things that we don't do and that we can't do. I wish we could do all of the things that they say we could do. But the fact is, we do not collect information on Americans. We do not collect information inside the United States. We are strictly foreign intelligence. And the biggest problem we have is connecting the dots. There are a lot of dots out there, because our job is to collect dots, find the right dots, put them together, and turn it into actionable intelligence, which will prevent terrorist attacks. And that is a very difficult job. It requires a lot of high technology.
So you have a demo for us.
We have a demo. We're going to take you into our secret lab where we're doing all this magic. But first, you have to put your eye about 10 inches away from that eye scanner so that the computer will know who you are and let you in.
Why am I suddenly afraid?
We are sorry, you are not identified.
Oh, tough toenails, dude. You know, I was looking forward to this interview, but I'm just going to have to go in there without you. It's been nice knowing you. Thanks.
Oh, come on.
Identification successful. Access granted.
See you later.
I shouldn't have worn the DEF CON t-shirt.
So this room is going to illustrate the problem of connecting dots across many different data domains.
And I'm looking at this. I'm seeing an array of monitors. I'm thinking, are these all running on separate systems?
Right. Each one has a separate network, air-gapped from other security networks. And they're different sources of collection, different sources of repositories of data, and different types of intelligence.
You've got all these machines in a cubicle. You've got people running down hallways to get access to information. How do you bring all that together?
Well, the situation that we're going to show you by analogy is not all that unusual, where a given intelligence analyst, and we call them all-source analysts because they fuse together lots of different types of information, may literally have 6 different PCs, 6 different keyboards, 6 different monitors, and have to shuttle back and forth and remember what they saw and write down notes in order to fuse all the information. And by analogy, what that's like is having different peaks at reality of different dots of information, and the analogy that we're going to use is looking through a knothole.
Okay.
Right? So here we're going to look through the first knothole on the first network, and you see an image or a piece of information which is kind of hard to understand.
Right.
Okay?
Could be a cloud, could be muslin, could be a
anything.
sheet.
Exactly. Could be the inside of your eyelid on a bright day.
That would be bad.
Yes. Okay, here's another dot of information. A little bit more texture to it, but still not quite clear what it is. And here yet is another one. Starting to get a little more suggestive, but again, we don't necessarily know what it is. And then we continue on around to network number 5 and network number 6. The problem is the human brain isn't very good at remembering fragmentary pieces of information unless you have photographic memory, as it were, and merging it all together. So the way we solve that, again, by analogy, is our technology here called NetTop.
So what are you guys putting together here with NetTop?
Well, NetTop is the solution to the problem we've just been talking about. What it does is it takes all these different networks and data domains and fuses it into one place so a human can see it in one place at one time and connect the dots. And continuing the analogy, it would be like fusing all of the knotholes. You put them all together, you see a picture that you wouldn't have seen without them all being in the same place at the same time.
Got it.
So what we're going to do is we're going to walk you through a realistic scenario of the different kinds of intelligence from different networks that we might have to piece together today. So the first thing we're going to show you here is a conversation that we acquired. It just kind of fell into our lap. Okay?
Got it.
And so we get a fragmentary piece of information, and here's what it says. Somebody, a civilian, is saying to another civilian, "Did you hear all those
Delete expletive.
bleep noise going down the goat path?" So something's going on in a go path. That by itself doesn't tell you a lot.
Right.
This is what we call signals intelligence. It's what we do. It's what we call SIGINT. We collect electronic signals as they're going from point A to point B, again, outside the United States.
Right.
And it says, flash, all military radio communications stopped at this point in time in this place.
So
It's the dog that didn't bark. Curiouser. This is what we call adversary intelligence. This is information we've gathered about bad guys from a source. And what this says is that we heard this source say to itself, hammer of steel is go, commence radio silence immediately. Well, that's interesting because we just heard radio silence.
So we know
Right?
the radio is silent. So something is going on.
Something's going on. Not only did we hear the dog not bark, we heard the dog's master telling the dog not to bark. And this is what we call electronic intelligence. And let's say that that has to do with emissions of a radar that might be carried by the enemy. And we get a report from collection that said a radar is active in an area. It turns out that this area, once you decode all the numbers, is kind of similar to the areas that we were just in.
So we've got silence where there was noise, we've got radio sounds, we've got armor movement, we've got the hammer of the gods, we've got natives reporting some weirdness going on.
Ah, but you just said armor movement. We heard heavy noises. We don't know that that's armor. But hold that thought.
Okay.
Okay. So over here, we continue. So now, the circumstantial evidence is mounting. We're starting to get some pretty good suspicions. And to add to the evidence, we have what we call satellite intelligence. And what this is saying is that an analyst has said there's troop movement at this time in this place, and here and here.
Got it.
So we're starting to get a clearer picture of what's going on. But still, it's fragmentary information. We're having to remember one piece of information as we move on to the next. The last piece of information in the puzzle is starting to look pretty darn suggestive. You said armor?
Armor.
Turned out you guessed right. But you got to be careful in intelligence. Not to guess. Not to let your perceptions lead you down a wrong path. It could have just as easily been a bunch of garbage trucks.
That would be bad.
So this is window number 1 from network number 1 and PC number 1. Number 2, number 3, number 4, 5, and 6. But one of the things I want to point out is, and you heard it here first, we're also working on technology that once we provide secure partitions between these different data domains and networks to allow you to copy and paste across them.
Based on rights and permissions.
Right. Then the next step that we're working on right now, and we have it going in our laboratory in an experimental form, is to be able to safely move data from one of these networks and domains into another so that you can merge it all into a single report and say, hey, here's a troop movement at this place and this time, and here's what kind of enemy we've got. And that's basically what the tactical commanders want to know.
Classic intelligence problem. You know, I can have the best information in the world, but if the people who need it can't get to it, it's like not having it.
Well, you know, you raise an interesting point because we make a distinction between information
and raw data.
Intelligence and knowledge, right? Intelligence is we picked up some information about a loud noise. Knowledge is that it connects in some ways with other information. Intelligence is an armored brigade with this designation, with this amount of capability, about ready to attack you here. Because that's what we call actionable intelligence. A commander in the field knows what to do with that information. Now, there's an adage in our business that complex problems require simple solutions. Very complex problems require very simple solutions. And here's the complex problem. By analogy, each computer program or application runs on data, which also by analogy is this colored paint that you see here.
Got it.
The problem is that an operating system or an application may be millions of lines of code, and there's no way to make sure that data that's running on that code doesn't leak where it shouldn't go.
As many of our Microsoft users in the audience are familiar with.
Well, I don't use the M word, you did.
I know. I use the M word.
All right. The other problem is that the operating system, again by analogy, which is the pan that supports all this stuff, when the stuff leaks, it allows it to mix. So two bad things happen here. We have a very simple solution. We don't try to do programs that won't leak. What we do is we put the programs in what we call a container. And a container is a virtual machine. A virtual machine is a software emulation of hardware. It doesn't matter if it leaks. your container is not going to let that leak get out. We now have to patch the remaining holes in our containers. And we do that by this thing called mandatory access control. Literally what we're doing is we've worked with Linux and modified it to have what we call secure Linux. And secure Linux has mandatory access control, which says there's a traffic cop that says you can't go there. So now we are certain, and we can prove it mathematically, that information is not going to leak out of those containers. Now, going back to the imagery that you saw just a while ago where we had those different windows of intelligence, each one of those is a container, a secure container. But, as I said, the ultimate goal is to be able to move information across one container to another. Another term for that is connecting dots. So that's what we're showing here with this plumbing. It's called controlled sharing. And that's sophisticated technology that we use to allow information, but only the information we want to move from point A to point B to move. And because we want to just be able to buy it as off the shelf, once we developed it, we work with both the people who do Linux and other providers to take the VMware, the secure Linux, and put it all together in this thing we call NetTop. And now NetTop can be bought off the shelf.
Is NetTop being currently deployed in various intelligence units? Is that the right phrase, intelligence units?
Intelligence units? It's the right phrase, but not the right question.
Okay, what's the right question?
Well, the right question is that we developed it to be deployed at intelligence agencies.
Got it.
But whether we have or not, I can't say.
It was extremely difficult to ask the question that Dr. Hazeltine could actually answer and share with everyone. But this is pretty much the most recent technology developed from our friends at the NSA that they were willing to share with us. Interesting point. We've heard Stephanie.
Hello.
Hey.
I don't know, Patrick. That guy says he doesn't keep files on us at the NSA. I don't believe him.
You know what? We'll never know.
I
don't believe him either.
If he didn't have a file on you before, I have a feeling he does now.
Well, in theory, right? They only look at communications outside of the continent of the United States.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you're about as trusting as I am. I'm gonna, not upset them, Stephanie. What's on